Welcome back to another edition of the Talking National League podcast, episode 3 tonight. And it's another action packed episode tonight. We are going to be speaking to a Scunthorpe fan on their relegation to the Vanarama National League. And I'm hoping we will also be joined by an Oldham fan. I am currently trying to bring one on because the other one's come on well, unfortunately for him. So we've got to try bringing another Oldham fan on, which I'm hoping to do later on with the show. Now, before we do that, please can you go give a follow to @Non-League Bible, who've kindly partnered with the podcast as we proceed further into each episode. And before we do go on to talking about Oldham, Scunthorpe and all the relegated clubs in the league, I've brought on Thomas Feaheny, who's going to be discussing some of the latest transfers surrounding the Vanarama National League that have happened over the last week. So let's bring Tom in now. Hiya, Tom. How are you doing?
Not too bad at all, thank you, mate. How are you?
Good, thank you. A little more optimistic, I have to say, now after some of the transfers that have happened over the past week with FC Halifax Town. And I believe we are going to be mentioning the Halifax signing, aren't we, tonight?
We definitely are. I think we can start with it if you want to.
Yeah, can do.
I'll start with the first for best for yourself. And obviously, Sam Smart joining, who a very direct player, somebody who, over 100 appearances for Eastleigh. And I think for FC Halifax Town, there's this thing of, obviously, once Pete Wild had gone, there was always going to be a number of players that left. And, you can't blame them players that have made the move into the Football League. You look at Bradbury going into League One, going to Cheltenham Town, a fantastic defender, someone who impressed at Yeovil, impressed at Halifax, and now gets his chance at Cheltenham. But I think for the Shaman, there was always going to be this thing of Pete Wild's leaving, what happens next? And slowly but surely, look, there's still time. There's still more than enough time until, we don't even know what the fixtures are just yet. But I think for FC Halifax Town, it's important that those first few signings, there is a bit of optimism there. And I think Sam Smart, is a good signing for the side and hopefully for the Shaman, it's something to build on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a silky winger, I know. Sam Smart. I've seen a few clips of him sent in from some Eastleigh fans. Seems to be, very dangerous on the counter-attack, got something about him, got something that not many players have, that driving work that he has, the skills that he's got on the left-hand side. One weakness to his game that I'm sure he can probably develop when he comes to the Shaman is his shooting ability to, get a few more goals. For example, last season, he only managed to get 2 goals for Eastleigh, albeit they did struggle last year, Eastleigh near the bottom of table. However, a lot of Eastleigh fans, have come back with only positive things to say about him. I think a lot of sides, I don't know if you know anything yourself, a lot of Football League sides were apparently looking at Sam Smart too. So very good signing for the Shaman.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the thing with what Pete Wild had done, managers before, and obviously this kind of new manager, but obviously someone who knows the club inside out already, is they get players who have that potential. And Sam Smart, definitely ticks a lot of the right boxes for that.
Yeah, certainly. So we move on to the next transfer then.
Yeah, and well, Notts County have been rather busy. Obviously, a new manager, and the first one, Sedwin Scott, a player who just so much potential in the National League North with Gateshead. Obviously, in a free with Campbell and Langstaff. Scored a lot of goals, between Langstaff and Scott, they scored over 50 in the National League North. And it's going to be really interesting to see how many goals they get between them at Notts County. It's an undisclosed fee. Obviously, with Langstaff, there was a clause in the contract. This is an undisclosed fee with Lewis Knight going the other way for a nominal fee. And, it's a great opportunity for Lewis Knight to get some game time and minutes in the National League because he is a player Gateshead had been looking at beforehand. But for Scott, he's a player that I be honest with you, I was shocked that he wasn't going to a Football League club because he has kind of all the ingredients for someone who has a lot of potential, has proven himself at the National League North, and then a player in Aidan Baldwin who this is kind of one of those where while Scott was definitely a transfer committee signing, where Notts County have done this. This is the new head coach, kind of having a big impact in getting in a player that he knows so well from their time together at MK Dons. So 2 really encouraging signings for Notts County. Obviously, I think they're sick of the playoffs. They're sick of all that. They really want to be pushing on, and there'll be other teams that are wanting that top spot as well. But Notts with a new head coach, I should say. New players coming in. There's definitely a lot of optimism there for the side.
Yeah, certainly. And you think of the 2 signings that Notts County have made coming from Gateshead. Do you feel that these 2 strikers who've come in, wings, midfielders, have the potential to be scoring as many goals as they were in the National League North last season and bring that to Notts County? And you've got to remember, you look at a side like Notts County, they've still got Ruben Rodriguez as we speak, Cal Roberts, all these attacking minded wingers and midfielders. Do you think these could help support those 2 strikers going forward so they can try to get into double figures for a second year running?
Yeah, I think, it's going to, obviously, you go up a division, that quality increases as well. And look, they had an incredible season together, but Gateshead in general had an incredible season with the amount of goals they scored. So it's going to be really interesting to see just how well they can work together. It obviously helps that they have a great understanding and a really good partnership already in place. But like you were saying, the likes of Cal Roberts, if he can remain injury-free, he arguably can be the best player in the National League. So, they are adding quality on quality, and it's going to be really interesting to see just how well that works now for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had a few people coming in the chat, leaving their suggestions, making themselves heard. Heather, I think 12, said up the UTI. I can't actually tell which club that does actually stand for.
Would that be up the Irons?
Could potentially be. Yeah, we've been I think they may be a Scunthorpe fan. Bertie's come on and said, "Hello, Dorking fan here. Loved your episode over day. Much appreciate that." I think Alfie's come on and said, where is Matt Dean? I believe is that the Oldham fan who could potentially be coming on tonight. He should be. I'm hoping we're going to be able to bring an Oldham fan on later on into the episode. Hez has come back and said excited to play Dorking next season. Yeah, it's something that I'm sure Scunthorpe will have to adjust to dropping down a division to be playing sides from the likes of Bradford City. No disrespect to Dorking, but they're a totally different outfit based on the history and stuff to playing Dorking, who are making their debut within the Vanarama National League. And that is going to be something very interesting to keep an eye on. A side like Dorking, like we've seen a lot of sides who've come up to the National League and have sort of declined. They haven't seemed to have been able to sustain a place within the Vanarama National League after a season, the likes of Hampton and Waterlooville, who've been in our division before. How do you think? I think I may have asked you this a couple of weeks ago. However, they have made a few more additions now. How do you feel that Dorking will do this season?
Well, they're a fascinating club because there are very few clubs out there where you can say that they just are a team that year on year have had momentum, and ever since they've been established, every year, they are a side who, from 2000 onwards, have always been, chasing and moving forward, driving forward, whether on the pitch or off the pitch, with the amount of changes that they've been able to make. And it's going to be really interesting for them because you look at just the amount of money that is going to be spent by your Wrexhams, your Notts Counties, the teams that are going to be going out there and spending so much, and obviously with huge aims and huge ambitions. And I think for Dorking, it's going to be one of those things where it's kind of like, let's just enjoy the adventure and see what happens. Now, you talk about teams that have struggled after going up. There are examples of teams that have gone up and then had a really good go and, really put in a great effort to try and go up again. So it's going to be fascinating. I think, for Dorking, a few signings announced. Obviously, there'd need to be, more for them to be in a position to be fighting at that right end of the table. But, players that have momentum and a dressing room that's united. I know they've lost some players, but when you've got that winning mentality, sometimes that can play a huge part in a club. And it'll be really interesting to see just what happens with Dorking, because they are kind of one of those sides which have a genuine question mark over them for where they will be next season.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to follow Dorking's future in the Vanarama National League. A lot of people haven't really predicted Dorking towards the bottom of the table, especially not in the relegation zone. I don't think I've seen one prediction line saying Dorking would get relegated, which is positive from their point of view to see. They've made some impressive signings, bringing in strikers who've been scoring a lot of goals within the Vanarama National League South. That's one negative I would like to point out. Usually sides coming up from the Vanarama National League South compared to sides coming up from the North do tend to struggle a lot more based off previous relegations within the Vanarama National League. Any more signings then, Tom? I think Nat Sharnock, who is a Halifax Town fan. Any Halifax rumours, Tom?
Well, I think it's one of those where, I think it'd be quite pointless to say they're looking at players. That obviously every club in the National League right now are looking at players. I think what I would say is I'd be encouraged with the calibre of players that are being looked at, very much going down the route of players that have high potential, players that, kind of, you're looking at them and thinking that they could definitely hit the ground running. And that'll be the hope for FC Halifax Town next season, is that, like with Pete Wild and like with Jamie Fullerton and like with all these examples where they've been able to get players in. And, I think that the kind of thing that they've done the last few years will remain, that there'll be a few trialists and, there'll be certain players that are kind of trialists by name only, where they kind of basically it's a done deal, but you've just got to wait for everything to be official and then it's done. So, look, I'd be looking at FC Halifax Town. I think it won't be like last season where at the start everyone was going, they should be ending in the playoffs because, of the quality that was there. But keeping the likes of Warburton, if that can happen, players like that are going to be so crucial for this side going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is crucial. Although we haven't, I think, lost, it's 5 players that have gone to Football League sides this season. That includes the likes of Captain Ma, Bradbury, Waters, Warren's left the club. Pete Wild's also left the club. We have kept, a good set of players. We've kept, our midfield. We haven't lost a single midfielder yet. God forbid that we don't by the end of the window. And that was a key part of our success last season, having that midfield with Spence, Green, Summerfield, even Warburton playing in that attacking role. These experienced and young, youthful players that can always offer something next season. Another thing, Jesse Deborah, he hasn't departed from the club, although there has been a lot of interest from Huddersfield Town. If we can keep these sort of players and make these additions, like these sneaky additions, like the Sam Smart, who's quite unknown within the Vanarama National League, who has a point to prove in this league. The likes of Jack Hunter. He seems to have joined the club in midfield from Gateshead and have got a high reputation from them. It seems like we could next season still be pushing towards the top of the table, which is something that I'm sure we will want to do. How would you say, based off the signings I've made so far, obviously we're a long way off having a set squad for next season. How would you assess Halifax's business so far, and where would you be predicting them?
Well, I think, in terms of the players that have left for the Football League, first of all, that has to be deemed a compliment for the side. It shows that the club, have had a fantastic season, and it shows the fantastic work that has been done there. And, the reality is when a team, does so well, they always get that attraction. And unless you're going to go up, or unless you're in a position where your budget, kind of dictates that you're able to afford to pay the players, a premium, you're always going to be losing a few players. Throw in the fact that Pete Wild's gone, and, it was odds on that there were at least 2 players that were going to be going to Barrow once that move had been confirmed. So I think in terms of the players that have been kept, the additions that are being looked at, I think, like I said earlier, I think last season it was kind of the Shaman should be in the playoff places come the end of it with everything that was on the table. This time round, I think it'll be a bit more of a challenge to get there. But, with and again, kind of keeping that thing where you've got a person in charge who knows the club already. You know, that can be really important. And obviously, he kind of got a point to prove as well because, you know, he's been in that assistant role. You're making that step up. It's always interesting to see what happens there. If he can hit the ground running as well, then all of a sudden, you know, kind of it's all in place for another decent season for the side.
Mm-hmm. Someone's come in and said Bromley's going to the Football League. They've made a few additions as well. The likes of Adam Marriott from Barnet. I personally feel, you probably have a different opinion, Barnet are in incredible danger of relegation next season, which is quite a big statement, I will have to admit. But you look at the players that Barnet have lost and the additions that they've replaced them with. Could you see Barnet struggling next season?
Well, I think, you know, with Dean Brennan, he has a very good pedigree in terms of the players that he can attract. And it'll be really interesting to see because Adam Marriott was he was the one where you think if they're going to do anything, you've got to keep him. And the moment the interest, obviously with the goals he was scoring, there was always going to be that level of interest. It's a major signing for Bromley, you know, and I think as well with Bromley, they're a team that have got that huge feel-good factor with what happened with the FA Trophy. I know in terms of the league, their form kind of dropped a little bit, but, you know, I think they'll have a good season. In terms of Barnet, I think for them, it is too early to say right now. The additions, there's been a couple of additions that I think are promising, encouraging, but there definitely needs to be, you know, I'd say at least 3 or 4 more players that are kind of marquee signings. But again, you know, the finance involved in the Marriott deal, they'll be able to save some of that, obviously, and put that elsewhere. And, you know, it'll be very interesting to see who they can attract and kind of the calibre of player they'll be able to attract going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now I'm unsure if this Oldham fan is going to be able to join us tonight later on within the episode. However, we can have a little look on them in case he doesn't join us quickly now. I know you've been keeping up to date with some of the signings they've made. Jordan Windass has signed for them for Oldham. What are your thoughts on that as a signing?
Well, it's a really interesting one because obviously, you know, his father's got an incredible history of playing. His brother, obviously, you know, is a Football League player. And, you know, with Jordan at Bradford Park Avenue, the one thing I'd say about him was he was really versatile. And it was always a thing of how would he react and kind of what would happen if he joined a full-time environment. And now he's going to be a senior player in a full-time environment. That's going to be really interesting. And another player as well, Mike Fondop, who kind of, you know, I think he's played for half the National League. You know, he's played for a load of clubs, and it'll be really interesting to see how he does because he's one of these really weird strikers to me where he seems to always have a big impact at the start, and then for whatever reason, it just doesn't get going particularly. So I feel like he's got a point to prove. Obviously, he was signed last season, but he's now signed a new contract and kind of in the National League. It's a league he knows so well. You know, could he make an impact? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, certainly. Someone's coming and saying working dark horses for sure next season. The loss of Innie Effingham. I think some players that have signed new deals with the club, that's something, it's like a new signing, some of these new deals, likes of Luke Young signing a new deal at Wrexham. Joseph Barr has extended his stay at Solihull Moors. What are your thoughts on these contracts being extended?
Yeah, I think, you know, Sabara's the big one for me because he was key to Solihull. And obviously they're going to lose 1 or 2 more players. You know, they're definitely going to lose 1 player. But I think in terms of if you were going to pick out that entire squad and say there's 1 player you can keep, he would be the one. And, you know, Luke Young at Wrexham is a really interesting one because he's a 2-time player of the season winner. You know, he's a big player as well, and he's someone Phil Parkinson trusts. And I have got to say on that Woking comment, you know, Padre Armand joining is a huge signing, an absolute marquee signing. He's someone who knows, you know, the National League inside out from his time with Grimsby Town, a player who is leaving Newport County, the league above, you know, a bit of a cult hero for what he'd done there. So, you know, Darren Sarll said that he wanted to build something, and obviously he's been able to get some impressive signings in. He's an impressive manager himself for the National League, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Woking this season.
Yeah, it certainly will. The loss of Feaheny, then replacing with a signing like that. And Darren Sarl, I believe, is also in charge of Woking at this moment in time. I can see Woking being strong next season. It wasn't looking good after the loss of Feaheny. You've also got to think, I believe Max Kretschmark is still with Woking at this moment in time. I haven't heard any news on him himself, but, the impact he had last season was significant for them. Do you feel if he does stay with the club next season, Woking could be even stronger, especially with the new signings too?
Well, I think, the big thing when Darren Shaw left Yeovil, and kind of it was a thing of, I'm going to a club which, are kind of going to be going for it. And that's how it feels with Woking. Obviously, they've got decent infrastructure there. They've got, a very ambitious board. And kind of it was always a case of, well, what signings can be made before pre-season? And it has to be said, they're definitely one of the teams so far that have really strengthened with a decent mix of the players they've got in. And also, it has to be said, some players that Darren Searle knows really well from time at Yeovil. So, it's kind of like, obviously going into an uncertain period where you get a new manager, but when he's able to be as highly rated as he is, but also bring in a few players and a few people that he knows really well, that will really help them. And I think the ambition is clearly there with Woking.
Mm-hmm. I think that more or less wraps up all the signings looking into certain clubs now, Tom. I believe you do have a meeting too, so I do really appreciate you coming on tonight, Tom, and hopefully we can catch up again in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, anytime, mate. Have a good one.
Thank you. So now we're going to be speaking to Toby Skelton, who is a Scunthorpe United fan. Obviously, Scunthorpe are down in the Vanarama National League for the first time in their long-lasting history. So it's quite a downfall for them when you think of the history of Scunthorpe, as well as the likes of Oldham, who've also come down to the division. So let's bring Toby in now. Hi, Toby. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm good, thank you. How are you doing, Luke?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yes, it's quite a decline, hasn't it, been for Scunthorpe over the past couple of years, now especially dropping down to the Vanarama National League. Sum up what that's like for you.
Sad, upsetting. We've come so far from a League One promotion candidates to National League relegation favourites. It's been a massive decline over the past sort of 4 or 5 years. But one that's been expected. All the fans have been sort of resigned to it the past few years. No one's surprised. No one is no one's really too downbeat by it because we all expected it. No one's taken aback by it. No one thinks like, oh, this is quite out of the blue. This is like a massive surprise to us. We all expected it. But it's been a disaster the past few years being a Scunthorpe fan. It's not been fun at all. And there's nothing that I can see is going to change that at all in the next sort of year or so, to be honest with you. It's quite a dull future and prospect for us.
But it doesn't help when you see the likes of fellow rivals Grimsby Town regaining their Football League status either. I've seen Scunthorpe, they're putting posts out on Twitter, and you're getting more Grimsby fans than Scunthorpe fans on there because Scunthorpe have nothing to shout about, and Grimsby fans are just wanting to boast about how well they're doing.
Yeah, they love it, giving us some stick, Grimsby Town fans. I mean, they had a great season themselves, but I think just us with relegation and then being promoted makes the season even worse than it should have been. So it's been it's not great stuff for local bragging rights really as well.
Mm-hmm. You talk about Scunthorpe being considered as relegation candidates this season. Is that a shock for you with the signings they've made so far, the players they've left? Obviously, Hippolyte, who's gone to Stockport, was on loan last season at them, has left the club. Do you feel that relegation could be a strong possibility next season for Scunthorpe? Massively. I mean, we've only signed one player, Andrew Boyce, so far. Our players returned for pre-season training as well today, and there's about, I think, 7 actual players over the age of 18 in the squad. There's no rumours of players coming in at all. The club's gone quiet. We have no kit for next season either. There's no communication between the fans and the club. I just don't see anything else apart from a bottom half finish, if not a relegation scrap next season. I don't see us coming above 14th at best, and at worst, relegation does not seem off the cards at all. I wouldn't be surprised if we go down to National League North again. So it's just, there's no bright sparks that I can feasibly see in the future for the club at the moment. Yeah, there's a lot of problems on the field, but also off the field. Is that something that's also not helping this current situation with Scunthorpe. How bad is it off the field, considering you look at a side like Oldham with, I think it's Abdullaha, who's obviously causing a lot of problems with them at the minute with Oldham Athletic. What's it like with the relationship with the Scunthorpe fans and Scunthorpe's board?
I think at an all-time low. There's a lot of resentment towards the ownership. The owner's not really putting any money into the club now. We're just signing players who are sort of the bargain bucket of players, if you like, really. There's no sense of, engagement between the supporters and the ownership. There's no achievements. There's no desire to progress as a club further. I think you can use the phrase managed decline about the club now, because there's been an element of the decline's been manufactured by the hierarchy. The owner's sort of lost interest. He's got his own other business that he's he's building a hotel in Blackpool. That's his main business interest. The club's sort of secondary to him. And we're just sort of, on the back burner, per se, for the owner. And when there's no real infrastructure at the club, when there's no signings coming in, there's players leaving left, right and centre. We were promised a new stadium that never materialised. There's a plethora of things that have gone wrong. I could be here all night discussing it. And there's no quick fix, because he was the chairman himself actually said that he wanted to sell the club. And there were, I think, 3 bids for the club in around May time, and they were all rejected. So does he really want to sell it, or is he just saying that to try and appease fans? Who knows, really? It's all sort of, we're all in the dark right now, and there's no information that's, can be considered to be true that we can feasibly hear. So it's just like, we're waiting for something, but that something won't happen at this point. And it's just very, very frustrating for us all.
Tell you what would frustrate me as well if I was a Scunthorpe United fan, seeing the club's recent Instagram posts, Twitter posts of, coming back to training and all the players looking positive. And, I'm sure that's something that you need heading into next season, but it's something that the fans are like, you can't even believe next season, being in the Vanarama National League. Like, some of the sides, Scunthorpe playing something that you probably can't believe. You're going to be playing the likes of, Maidenhead. No disrespect to them as a club, but you think of the history of them and you think of the history of a side like Scunthorpe. It's quite sad to see, isn't it, sharing the same division?
Massively, but by the same token, I think that we deserve to be there because of, we were the worst team in EFL recent history. And maybe we are bigger than sides like Dorking, perhaps, but we have no divine right to not play these teams. We're on a level playing field. We can't think we're too big for this league, because we're clearly not. We are where we are because we deserve to be there. We can't say that we were lucky to relegate, because we weren't. We were adrift by somewhat daft like 20 points last season, and we only won 4 games all season. So we are where we are because of the fact the squad isn't good enough. The small, just sort of something. They're not. They've got, and we've done the right. And we deserve to play these teams. They might be smaller, but they have to be there as of we.
I believe, Toby, I think you might be cutting out, so I'll remove you from the stream for now, and then hopefully you can try and get this internet sorted, and then we can carry on. I'll quickly just read some of your comments that have come in as well while we try and get Toby back into the stream. So Chris Stringer, I believe this is an Oldham fan, says, if we don't get Abdullah and Mo and Owen out of our club, we will pass straight through poor John Sheridan. No fans at home. Apparently we are rebels. OAFC doomed under this owner. Yeah, it's not good to see, is it, at Oldham Athletic either. Now, people are coming in a chat now with sympathy for Oldham too. Now, I believe, are we back? I think we may be back. There we go. Toby, are you back now?
Sorry about that. Yeah, my
no problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I believe you were talking about like the defined right of, Scunthorpe playing at the likes of Dorking next season. You were cutting up a bit, so please could you just repeat that?
Yeah, I was just saying, we have no divine right to be higher than these sort of teams. We're in this league for a reason, because the squad wasn't good enough last year and the club's declined massively over the sort of past 5 years or so. And these teams are there on merit. They've gone through the National League system. They deserve to be there as do we. So I don't want our fans to be sort of thinking that we're too good for this league or we're too big for this league, because we're clearly not. We're here because we deserve to be, as the smaller teams. So yeah, I don't mind playing these teams, because again, we deserve to, you know.
I think a Scunthorpe fan's come in the chat and said, I wouldn't be surprised if Dorking batter Scunny about 4-0 next season. It's just not looking good. And it's sad to see, like, I've been complaining about our club with the additions that we've been making after, you know, a comfortable 4th place finish last season, which was respectable for us as a Halifax Town fan. But you look at the sides like Scunthorpe and Oldham coming down to the division. It's deflating, isn't it? You know, coming down to the Vanarama National League. And I'm sure you have a lot more experience now of the Vanarama National League, seeing comments and posts compared to previous years when you've had the likes of Notts County coming down and Leighton Orient thinking, oh, we're too big for this league. We'll get straight back out of it. Where I haven't seen one Scunthorpe fan or one Oldham fan say, oh, we can easily get back up out of this division.
Yeah, I think our fans aren't sort of like delusional to assume that we can do that, because the club itself is in massive danger of just even not existing in a few years' time. You know, we've got a lot of debts, and the stadium's owned by a separate company as well. There's no real infrastructure in place at the moment. So I think that our fans are quite grounded. You know, we're here for a reason. And I think our fans would take survival next year as a massive achievement. Like, that's how bad we are at the moment. That's the level of hope that we hold as a football club and as an institution.
Yeah, it's just not good to see, is it, when you with Scunthorpe at this moment in time? You know, the infrastructure, everything, and you say that in a few years' time, Scunthorpe could not be a club. What would be the ideal future now? If you were the Scunthorpe manager or the Scunthorpe board, what would be the ideal reality for Scunthorpe heading into next season and long term?
Well, to just survive as a club would be the sort of the main goal, because the future of the club itself is in peril. And that's not even an exaggeration. That's like the genuine truth about how bad we are right now. Obviously, keeping the club afloat, surviving the National League next season. We've got a lot of sort of promising young players who are playing now. So hopefully they can maybe be sold for a decent fee in the future, and that can be reinvested into the budget. But again, you know, there's been no decent signings for years, because last summer, right, we signed, I think it was 6 players, and they were all released this summer. And they played a combined, I think it was 30 games. Like, all the times we had made last summer have barely played all this year, and we released it. It's just like the recruitment has been terrible. Like, we signed a player called Donovan Charan 2 years ago, and I think he played 4 games in 2 years. And it's just ridiculous. Like, we've signed players who will never get a game. You know, they're being paid by the club, obviously, and we're seeing no footballing prowess. We don't even play them. We don't give them a chance. So we're buying players for the sake of it who will never appear in the first team. And that needs to stop. We need to be getting in players who will play, who won't waste our wage bill, because obviously it's very, very small as it is. We can't afford to be paying players who won't even play ever. Just the whole club needs a restructuring. You know, we need a new owner, ideally, because the current one isn't interested. You know, he's no desire to reinvest money into the budget. We just need an entire new foundation, really, and a start from top to bottom. But I can't see happening for a good few years now. I think right now we just need to survive in the National League, survive as a club, and then from there, who knows, really. But at the moment, it's just too bleak to even sort of look past the next 18, 24 months, really. That's how bad the predicament is here.
Yeah, and do you think that one day Scunthorpe could regain their Football League status? You know, we've seen the restructuring of Stockport, for example. Like, they've spent over a decade within the Vanarama National League, dropping down to the Vanarama National League North, which is looking increasingly, not likely, but potentially Scunthorpe dropping down to to the National League North and following Stockport's footsteps. You know, I look at a side like Halifax myself, and I know we will never get, superior investment. However, do you think Scunthorpe's more attractable for, in the near future, some, investment for the club, which can help, sustain, their football reality and try get back up the leagues and have a bit more positivity going around the town?
I think potentially, obviously, there were 3 parties that bid for the club over the last sort of month or so, and they were all rejected. But there has been interest before in the club, but the chairman values the club like way beyond any sort of reasonable expectation. So unless there's some massive consortium who are willing to pay over the odds for the football club, then it's very, very unlikely. So we just need the chairman to go before anything else can be sort of planned about any regaining of our football league status. Because right now, unless there's a massive change, we're going to be going down even further. And promotion is light years away for us right now. None of our fans expect, none of our fans can see it for the next few years. We're going to be going one way and that's just down. There's nothing that can change my views on that unless the ownership changes like dramatically, because otherwise we're essentially doomed. And it does sound very depressing saying it, but it's the truth. And like, I'm not going to try and like pretend that's not the case. I'm going to be honest with you. And the club itself, like all our fans are so pessimistic now. There's no optimism. There's no sense of like pride in the club. It's just like it's gone to waste, and nothing's changing really.
What's the retain list like then at Scunthorpe United? What players have left the club, departed? Obviously, I know about Hippolyte. The any players that you've released. What is the overall squad looking like for next season?
Thin, I think, is the word I'd use for the squad. We've retained Alfie Beeston and Jay Rowe, who I think are our two better players. And that's not really saying much because obviously last year we were bottom of the league by far. But they were sort of two players that I think could do decent next season potentially. Apart from that, it's mostly just young players sort of under the age of 19. We released Roy Watson, our keeper, last year. He was our best player and he's, be going to a Football League team. I mean, in the squad itself for the next year, I think if we're playing young players like almost exclusively in the National League, we're going to get torn apart by some of these bigger teams and some of these more physical teams, really. And I think it's a very, very dangerous idea to do that because these players have got very little experience of playing football at all. They're sort of 17, 18 years old as well. And it's a very, very dangerous idea. So, I mean, our team itself is very, very thin. We can't even fill a bench at the moment. That's how thin our squad is. So, I mean, where do you start with that? Like, there's no incomings rumoured. There's no sort of players that we think could come in because we can't afford to pay fees. We can't afford to pay decent loan fees to players now. So it's going to be just exclusively free agents and young players coming in. Maybe the odd loan from a lower end League Two team, perhaps. But right now, I don't really hold much hope of getting any sort of marquee signings in, if you will.
What are the average gates then at Scunthorpe United now?
Yeah, so around the 2,000 mark is sort of the average. We've sold 1,200 season ticket holders for this season so far, which is actually better than last year, which is baffling because, we're a league below as well. The ownership's got worse from last year, but we've sold more, which is a strange one. But I don't know. I mean, I don't see the gates increasing at all. There'll be sort of maybe 1.8 thousand next year, 1.8k at a push for the bigger games. For, I don't know, Eastleigh at home, 1.5 at a push, really. There's no real interest in the club now because the ownership's just that toxic that no one's really going to want to pay on the gate for a game. And against these smaller teams as well, there's going to be less interest, obviously, naturally. So I don't see the gates getting much more than 2,000 for the very, very biggest game next season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's just sad. I keep repeating it. It's just so sad to see.
Yeah, it is very sad. Right,
I know because I haven't suffered from it myself. However, I know older fans, our club has suffered from this ourselves. Halifax Town having to, reform, which is a path that Scunthorpe could potentially be going down, having to reform, etc. What were the average gates then before the ownership issues, the relegation? What was it like when it was all smooth and just pondering around with League Two?
Well, you see, when we were in League One for the sort of playoff years in 2017-18, we only got around 4,500, so not an awful lot more to be fair. Obviously, still football essentially, but it wasn't like we've never been a massive club. We only have like a core of say 2,500 fans that will go, almost all the time, and another sort of 1,000 or 2,000 that will come for the bigger matches that will come on the sort of the glory years, if you will. We've never been a bigger team. We've never been a big team, sorry, but I think next year 1,500, 2,000 in between there will be the average gate, I'd imagine.
Yes, very, very similar to Halifax Town. I know when we were, this is a long, long time ago now, and I keep going over Halifax as well. When we were pushing up towards the top of the league, prior to the old club, we were getting similar gates to what you've said when you were in League One. It's, how crowds have decreased since we've reformed as a club. Scunthorpe, their crowds have decreased next season. What are you most looking for? Making it a bit more positive now, what are you most looking forward to as a Scunthorpe fan next season? Potential away days?
Yeah, the away days, definitely. Like even the sort of the smaller grounds to me like sound like they'd be quite a fun day. Obviously, going to grounds that we wouldn't normally go to, like your Dorkings, your Maystones, and that. I think just the whole experience of like a new league, all these new places that I've not been to before. I mean, we're gonna get beat most of the games, but like I'll have fun in some capacity.
Yeah.
So I think like it's not all gonna be doom and gloom. Like there will be some fun days. There'll be some like days that I enjoy this season. Obviously, we'll try and get a few wins here and there at a push. We can hope. But like no, just the away days really. Like even the Dorkings, the Maidenheads, even like we've got some fairly close ones like Notts County, Chesterfield, York. They're all sort of derbies-ish, if you will. Not quite Grimsby, obviously, but sort of local-ish. These are some decent grounds. Obviously, Halifax as well. That's a new ground that I've not been to yet, so that'd be a good day out.
You'll like Halifax away. You want to hope that it can take over 500 because when sides do that, you get put in an alternative stand, which fans preferably prefer because you can generate more of an atmosphere in the other stand.
Yeah, the terrace stuff looks nice as well at Halifax.
Yeah, that's what you would be. You'd either be down the Skirket, which is down the side, or behind the goal. But if you bring less than 500, I believe, you'd actually be put just down the side, just a bit further on from the home fans. So it just depends how many you would bring, which obviously will, differ depending on how you're doing within the league. But I'm sure Scunthorpe, besides like yours, could definitely be taking over 500 at Halifax.
I think so, yeah, because Halifax is about an hour and a half from here. It's not too far away. So
it's closer than Grimsby. It's closer than Grimsby away. And that's very local to us,
Yeah. So I reckon we could bring definitely at least 500 to that one. Yeah. New ground as well. So, I don't see why not. Yeah.
You're looking forward to the likes of Wrexham then away. I keep saying this. Every guest that we bring on when I discuss away days when they're new to the league. We had some sides that have been promoted last season on. It's not an enjoyable away day from my perspective. I've been there on 2 occasions as a Halifax Town fan, and you get crammed in a corner, and the food is dreadful, I have to say. How many away days do you usually go to within the season?
Well, I went to all but 2 last year, and they're both on a Tuesday night. So all the Saturday ones I've been to. So in League 2, I've been to all the grounds now. So obviously, I've been to Notts County, Chesterfield, and Southend in National League so far. So I've only been to 3 of them. So all the rest be new ones, obviously. So they'd all be a good day out, I can imagine. Probably get beat, but I've seen defeats for the past 5 years almost exclusively. So it's nothing new to me. So I can definitely take it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it Southend away last season. I went to Notts and Chesterfield as well. Yeah, 3 traditional football league clubs. So it's them sort of grounds are probably my favourites. However, you can't beat a non-league ground. Going to somewhere like a Dorking next season, a Wheelstone. You get a traditional non-league feel, and when you're taking good numbers there, it's even better because it adds to that atmosphere and that proper traditional non-league feel. But what would your expectations be for next season? Now, what position would be suitable for you? Do you feel?
Again, it's just a case of surviving, really. I said before that I don't see us getting any higher than like 14th, 15th, and I think if we survive, that'd be a good achievement because that's the perilous state that we are in now. That survival would be seen as a massive deal for us. So anything beyond survival would be just incredible and a massive bonus, really.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's hard to say at the minute. Like I'm trying to assess my predictions. I don't know if you will be doing them yourself, and I look at sides like Scunthorpe and I'm torn between because there isn't much transfer activity going on.
Nothing at all, basically. Yeah.
I know everyone's complaining about Oldham at this moment in time. How many, I think Scunthorpe are going under the light a little bit, to be honest, compared to Oldham. Oldham are right under that spotlight with their ownership issues compared to Scunthorpe. But Scunthorpe, finished bottom of the league last season. They haven't kept too many of last season's players. They've lost the lack of Hippolyte, who obviously was on loan last season to Stockport. They were a side for me that I could really see struggling. Now, I will open this up to the chat now. Who do you reckon will finish higher, Scunthorpe or Oldham? I personally would have to say Oldham are going to finish higher just based off their transfer activity. Now, you look at Oldham's transfer activity, they're bringing in likes of Liam Hogan. They've got Michael Fondop, who's proven at this level this season. They've got Zach Durnley as well, was on loan at us, seemed to be a clinical striker if he was given the opportunity. You think of that compared to Scunthorpe's situation, it puts you in danger. And I would have to say that. And there are some poor sides in this division that I have to say that I saw last season that should were lucky to survive. However, this season looks very competitive. And when I've been trying to draw up my relegation candidates, I can't think of too many. And unfortunately, the way Scunthorpe's transfer activity has gone, I have to put them in the mix for that relegation, spot at this moment in time, unless they can make some transfers that are significant enough to try keep them in this division. I know everyone else will have a different opinion on a side like Scunthorpe. I think that more or less wraps it up then, talking a bit about Scunthorpe. Toby, I do really appreciate you taking the time to come on tonight's show. And best of luck for next season.
Thank you very much. Yeah, cheers, Luke. Thank you very much. Yeah, take care.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye. Cheers. So that was talking to Toby Skeleton, who is a Scunthorpe United fan. Now, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get an Oldham fan on tonight. I will try to talk a little bit now, see how it goes. What I am actually going to do, as we have a few listeners who are Oldham fans watching at this moment in time, I'm going to send a link via the chat. And if you want to put this into Google search bar, put a name in, your proper name, please, come on and talk a bit about Oldham, then we can do. Now, I will read some of the things that come out in the chat just now. I won't put them on the screen, so if any Oldham fans watch this, we'll try keep it for 5 minutes or so, and if any join, I will bring you in. Chris Stinger said, I'm also worried about the apparent poor level officiating that we'll see from what I hear. It's a bad standard. To be fair, our own is promised to get us out of League One. Well, he did. Saying that you're going to get out of League One and you still haven't. We've had a comment coming now. I can't come on. No, it was Alfie, I believe it is. It's short notice. I expected that. It's gonna be interesting to see what Oldham can do next season. I have to say, now I looked at Scunthorpe just then and the signings they've made and the lack of transfer activity. Oldham are a side that is quite hard to put them in a current position. I personally feel they will be in the top half of the National League table, just based off the transfer signings that they have made so far. The likes of Liam Hogan are experienced at this level. Windass, who obviously Tom Feaheny were talking about earlier on in the podcast. They have got the players I feel that are capable of potentially securing a playoff spot next season for Oldham. Now, I remember someone just a second ago were talking about the officiating within the National League division. You'll adjust to it after a while. I certainly have as a Halifax Town fan. I've heard people talking about League Two officiating being dreadful. So, it varies your different opinion. I believe we'll probably wrap it up there. To be honest, it's a little shorter than the usual podcast, unfortunately. Cheers to everybody that has tuned in to tonight's stream. We'll try and get some more guests on for next week's podcast. I may do it pre-recorded just in case this scenario happens. If you would like to drop the podcast a like, it would be most appreciated. Also, drop us a sub if you are new. We are on the road to 500 subscribers. So, if you can do that, that would be most appreciated. Also, give our partners at Non-League Bible a follow on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. That would also be most appreciated. Cheers to everyone that's come in the chat tonight, and apologies for not really focusing in on Oldham too much. We'll try to do that in upcoming episodes in the coming weeks to try get an insight into Oldham going into next season. If any fans are watching and we haven't mentioned your club very much yet, drop us a message on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook saying what you would like to talk about. And we'll try to get a guest from your club or potentially even yourself to talk about your club heading into next season. However, there has to be something going on within your club at this moment in time. Cheers to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Thank you to everyone that's got involved within the National League live chat. It is much appreciated. Go give us a follow on all social medias. Drop me a follow on YouTube, a subscription, and that most wraps it up. And thank you to everyone that's tuned in to tonight's podcast. I'll see you next week.